Rain-scented rotor wash scraped across the rooftop as the police helicopter's searchlight pinned Muhammad Ali and Hadir against a crumbling parapet. Prop wash rattled a loose billboard, its tin panels clanging like a cutman's bucket. Ali squinted through the glare, hand shielding Hadir's eyes. Somewhere below, sirens tangled with car horns on Rue de Fenicie, the whole city sounding like a single broken alarm clock. A bullhorn barked Arabic orders. Neither of them moved. Ali's knuckles still tingled from the exhibition rounds, but the ache in his lungs came from something heavier. He could feel the film canister inside his canvas rucksack thudding each heartbeat against his spine. Evidence of what, he still didn't know, only that people were ready to kill for it. Hadir pressed her mouth close to his ear. Maintenance ladder, 12 feet behind the generator. Her breath vibrated with phenol from the shattered ampoule, but her voice was steady. Ali nodded once, eyes never leaving the white cone of light. Then he did what every ringside skeptic said he'd lost the speed to do. He fainted. He yanked Hadir sideways, as though aiming for a service door, and the searchlight followed. A heartbeat later, he pivoted on his lead foot, shoulders slipping the imaginary punch, and sprinted the opposite way, dragging her into darkness. Rotor blades hammered the air behind them. A fusillade of Arabic curses chased their heels. They reached the square metal ladder, bolted to a ventilation stack. Ali shoved the rucksack through first, then lifted Hadir by the waist and set her feet on the top rung. "Down," he whispered. "2 at a time if you can." She disappeared into the shaft. Ali followed, boots clanging, the rancid smell of pigeon droppings thick in the narrow tube. Halfway down, floodlights splashed into the shaft. A shot cracked overhead. Concrete dust peppered Ali's shoulders. He sucked air, tucked chin, and dropped the remaining 10 feet in a single slide, palms burning against rusted steel. He landed hard, knees flexing, then grabbed Hadir's elbow and pulled her beneath the overhang of a loading dock. The alley behind the hotel was a throat of black water and garbage steam. Fluorescent tubes blinked over dented trash cans, giving momentary glimpses of graffiti, political slogans, Maronite crosses, the looping scrawl of Palestinian tags. A battered reel-to-reel recorder lay smashed beside a heap of newspapers, its brown tape flapping like a severed kite tail. Ali listened. Boots on the roof, radio chatter, but no one yet on the fire escape. They had seconds, maybe a minute. He pressed the bag into Hadir's hands. "What's on that film?" She shook her head. "Names, arms routes. It implicates half the embassy staff upstairs." One corner of her mouth lifted despite the fear. "And you thought you were only fighting Foreman." "Foreman just throws hooks," Ali muttered. "Hooks I can see." He scanned the alley. "We need wheels." A delivery truck idled at the far mouth of the lane, driver leaning against the fender, rolling a Gitane cigarette. Velour blazer, wide lapels catching sodium light. Ali strode toward him, shoulders relaxed, as though finishing a late workout. The driver glanced up, recognition flashing. "Cassius Clay?" Ali didn't slow. "You like the champ?" "Man, I bet on you in Miami." "Then let's make sure you can collect." Ali jerked a thumb toward the cab. "We borrow your truck. You get ringside tickets next stateside bout." The man laughed, flicked ash. "Keys in it. Bring her back, eh?" Ali slid into the driver's seat, vinyl sticking to sweat-damp shirt. Hadir climbed beside him, shoving the rucksack between her feet. As Ali jammed the column shifter into first, footsteps clattered at the alley entrance. Flashlights strafed the walls. He punched the gas. The truck lurched, tires spitting gravel. They burst onto Rue de Fenicie, nearly clipping a column of Italian scooters. Horns blared. Someone hurled a curse in French. Hadir twisted in her seat, watching red strobes erupt behind them. Ali threaded through traffic, downshifting, engine groaning. Ahead, the Corniche glittered under moon haze, waves slapping breakwater stones like slow applause. Inside the cab, the only sound was road hiss and the faint click from the truck's 8-track player, Donna Summer fading in and out. Hadir opened the bag, fingertip tracing the dented film can. "If we reach the U.S. consulate before dawn," she whispered, "this could stop a war." Ali kept his eyes on the dark ribbon of coastline. Every street lamp flashed across the windshield like a ringside strobe. He thought of the guard in Harlem, of the promoter's threats in sweaty back rooms, of his brother somewhere tied to a battery. The radio of fear hissed louder, predicting darkness permanent as a neutral corner. He tightened his grip on the wheel. "Then we can't get counted out before the bell," he said. Behind them, sirens crescendoed, closer, hungry. Ali exhaled once, slow and deliberate, the way Dundee had taught him between rounds, then dropped the accelerator. The truck leaped forward into the salty night, its tail lights vanishing beyond the next curve, carrying a canister of volatile truth and a fighter who understood better than anyone that survival was just another kind of title defense. The truck's wheels hammered potholes along the shadowed Corniche until the seaside boulevard bent inland toward Hamra. Neon bar signs smeared pink and turquoise across the windshield, momentarily hiding the cruiser headlights that prowled 2 blocks behind. Ali guided the delivery van past the Riviera Cinema, marquee bulbs strobing titles in Arabic and French, then cut right onto a narrow service lane where laundry lines drooped like surrender flags between balconies. In the passenger seat, Hadir unfolded a grease-stained city map, tracing a route with her thumb. The consulate's southern gate sits off Spears Road. Marines there won't let a Lebanese squad bulldoze through without clearance. Ali downshifted, engine growling. Clearance is something we're short on. He checked the rear view. The tail had multiplied. 2 Peugeot gendarmes, and, further back, a black Mercedes riding without plates. He pictured Vebs's silver lighter, the click of that coin, the photo of his brother twitching under battery leads. A new doubt jabbed his ribs. What if the men behind him answered to the same American flag he was racing toward? A pile of fruit crates toppled from a donkey cart directly ahead. Ali jerked the wheel, the truck fishtailing as oranges exploded under the tires. He steadied, breath slicing cold through his throat. Hadir braced a hand on the dash, knuckles white. "Keep talking," he ordered. "Tell me why they'll risk all this over 1 reel of acetate." "It's not the film, it's the annotation." Arms manifests stamped with CIA code names, drop points from Dakar to Haifa. Someone's been running hardware through UN relief convoys, and they're laundering the payoffs through a Vegas casino you once headlined. Ali blinked at her. That's one hell of a connection to pin on a man who just throws jabs for a living. Exactly. She snapped the map shut. You're the face. If they can pin one crooked deal on you, the rest of the evidence dies from reasonable doubt. Headlines will scream, "Boxer finances gun running." Congress yawns, racket rolls on. Sirens flared. A bright cone of police lights splashed the rear doors. Ali punched the accelerator, but another cruiser roared from a side street, cutting across the bonnet. Brakes screamed. He cranked left, metal grinding stone as the truck scraped a limestone archway and burst into a cul-de-sac that stank of diesel and fish scales. Dead end. Out, Ali hissed. He killed the ignition, grabbed the rucksack, and popped the driver's door. They sprinted toward an iron stairwell clinging to a warehouse wall. Halfway up, floodlights swept the yard. French orders echoed, "Arrêtez-vous!" He ignored them, muscles burning, as he vaulted a railing onto the warehouse roof. The roof was a jigsaw of water tanks and busted skylights. Beyond it, in the humid glow of Beirut's midnight, stood a rust-striped cargo crane towering over Port Saint-Georges. Ali pointed. Steelwork leads straight to the pier. From there, we ghost the breakwater, circle to Spears. Can you manage a 60-foot beam walk? Hadir asked, breath ragged. Balance is footwork, he muttered, flashing the grin that sold out Madison Square Garden. Just keep your guard up. They crossed sheet metal roofs, boots creasing corrugation like snare drums, until reaching the crane's maintenance catwalk. A single bulb flickered, revealing a sea of container stacks below. Ali swung onto the narrow railed plank, knees flexing against the wind. Each gust felt like the crowd roar of Manila, hot and relentless. He tasted salt and rust. Beneath the metallic tang thrummed that private radio, the hiss of eventual blindness doctors warned would come if the tremors spread from his hands to his optic nerve. Not tonight, he told the static. Halfway across, gunfire cracked. Sparks danced off the railing near Hadir's hip. A team of plainclothesmen had reached the rooftop they'd left, silhouettes steadying rifles on tripods. Ali shoved Hadir ahead, shielding her with his back. Another shot rang. Shrapnel nicked his left arm, warm trickle soaking sleeve. He tightened fingers on the rail, refusing the wobble. The opposite platform ended at a service ladder dropping onto stacked shipping containers. Ali lowered Hadir, then jumped after her, knees absorbing the blow. Bullets pinged above but couldn't find angles through the steel maze. They ran, zigzagging between containers marked Pan Am and UNICEF. At the pier's edge, an aging tug coughed diesel beside a bollard. Its captain, gray beard under a knit watch cap, smoked while fiddling with a portable shortwave the size of a lunchbox. He glanced up as they approached. Recognition flashed, the rumble of newspaper photos and pirate radio commentary meeting his eyes in real time. You're far from Zaire, champ. And you're 5 minutes from a police cordon, Ali shot back. We need a lift to the yacht basin by the lighthouse, no questions. The captain eyed Hadir, then the red bloom on Ali's sleeve. He stubbed the cigarette. Questions cost time. Hop aboard. They leaped onto the deck, ropes fanned like snakes underfoot. The tug lurched away from the quay, prop churn slapping brackish water. Searchlights combed the harbor entrance, but the tug's running lamps stayed dark, its silhouette folding into a procession of hulks waiting for dawn. Ali leaned against the cabin, sucking sea wind through clenched teeth. Hadir opened the medical kit the captain tossed her, wrapped gauze around his arm. Her hands trembled now that adrenaline ebbed. Can you still see straight? She asked. Ali stared toward the lighthouse where a faint star-white beam swept the horizon like a referee's gaze. The pain sharpened every heartbeat, but his eyes were clear, night shapes crisp against the water. Vision's perfect, he murmured, though inside that radio crackled with interference he alone could hear. And until the bell rings, we keep punching. Behind them the city flickered, a strip of film burning frame by frame, while the tug nosed south, carrying a battered champion, a photographer with proof, and a reel that could redraw borders if they reached shore alive. Sea spray cooled the wound while diesel fumes clung to the tug's deckboards. By the time the lighthouse's pale beam swept across them at close range, the captain had throttled down to a hush no louder than a sewing machine. They glided into the marina's service slip, where boats wearing American, Greek, and Liberian flags listed in tired rhythm against worn rubber fenders. Ali vaulted to the dock first, landing softly on creosote black planks that flexed under his weight. The reverberation rolled through his calves and up into the rucksack whose every rustle reminded him that a strip of cellulose could topple far more than a heavyweight. A lone maintenance shed waited beyond piles of rotting net. Its tin roof pinged as warm night air condensed into droplets, and inside, a muted bulb the color of nicotine cast long shadows over coils of anchor chain. Hadir tapped twice, paused, then a third time. The plywood panel slid back, and Edward Thorne, once SIS liaison in Cairo, now freelance fixer, emerged wearing paint-stained bell-bottoms and a paisley shirt that might have been bright before 1,000 desert suns bleached it into surrender. "Hell of a night for sightseeing," he murmured, stepping aside. The shed smelled of boiled coffee and damp canvas. A portable reel-to-reel player, Spoolmatic 400, word on a crate, recording a hiss of dock traffic to mask their voices. Thorne tossed Ali a folded navy blue jacket with brass buttons. "Harbor Authority inspection coat. Slip it on. The badge won't hold up under fluorescence, but it gets you through 2 checkpoints." Ali shrugged into the disguise, flexing shoulders until the fabric settled. Pain flared where the bullet groove tugged stitches, yet he kept his face blank. Hadir produced the metal fragment the Harlem boy had handed him hours earlier. Under Thorne's desk lamp, its ridged edges resolved into a fragment of diplomatic crest, an eagle talon, and 3 letters. O.S.A. Thorne whistled through his teeth. Office of Special Activities, Langley's Cloak and Dagger Aviators. If this fell off luggage near our champion, someone wants him framed for more than a fixed bout. A phone rang, the rotary model mounted beside the generator. 2 shrill bursts, then silence. Thorne answered, muttered, and hung up. "Patrol boats just blocked the northern channel. They're tightening the drawstring. Only land route left is through the Green Line, and you've got 30 minutes before dawn prayers flood those streets." Ali's pulse ticked faster. Beirut at sunrise was an anthill. Vendors shouting, scooters sputtering, soldiers from 6 militias popping sunflower seeds while fingering triggers. Moving invisible required momentum, not stealth. He opened the shed's rear door. Humid air carried distant megaphone bark and the metallic rattle of armored half-tracks repositioning near Rue de Rome. "We cut through the garment district," he decided, already mapping footwork like ring canvas. Textile stalls stacked to the sky, makeshift alleys every 5 yards. They'll lose clear lines of fire. Hadir shouldered the rucksack, nodding once. Thorne pressed a Polaroid into her palm. Ali's face, hers, and an embassy guard snapped at last year's charity gala. Flash that if the Marines balk. They drink the legend, same as everyone. Dock boards creaked beneath hurried strides. They skirted a yacht where BGs spilled from a reel-to-reel party below decks, then slipped into a maintenance tunnel smelling of tar and garlic where rats navigated like seasoned commuters. At the far end, a corrugated gate hung ajar. Beyond it, gravel crunched under boot heels, and the port's sodium lamps painted every object the sick color of aspirin. A checkpoint loomed. Plywood booth, single bulb, Lebanese constable polishing a Czech pistol harder than his English. Ali swaggered forward, clipboard underarm, jacket badge catching faint light. "Manifest check. Captain Gassan signed the log." The guard blinked, caught off guard by the boxer's familiar jawline, yet uncertain in the borrowed uniform. Before suspicion could crystallize, Thorne pitched his voice over Ali's shoulder, pantomiming irritation. "If paperwork delays shipment, Paris pulls the exhibit. Tell your colonel he can explain that to the minister." The guard swallowed, waved them through, and resumed polishing. Once clear, they merged with pre-dawn vendors pushing carts of za'atar bread. Flour dust swirled like chalk in a gym. Ali inhaled sesame and diesel, the scent tangled with memories of Louisville alleys after roadwork, but a new sound intruded, rotor chop approaching fast. He yanked Hadir beneath an awning seconds before a spotlight fingered the boulevard. A bullhorn blasted Arabic commands to halt. Vendors scattered, dough flying like confetti. Ali gauged distance to a stone arcade across the street, then sprinted. Hadir tucked behind his left shoulder, the way he'd cut inside a southpaw's jab. Bullets chewed pavement. A jar of olives erupted beside his ankle, brine-stinging skin. They dove through a tailor's doorway. Mannequins in velvet tuxedos toppled like stiff spectators. Inside, an elderly Armenian cutter froze, scissors halfway through teal velour. Ali flashed the badge again. "Civil inspection. Show us an exit." The tailor pointed to a back storage hatch connecting to the adjoining pharmacy. Ali rammed it with a shoulder. Wood splintered. In the pharmacy, a transistor radio whispered, "Marvin Gaye," drowned by the wheeze of steel shutter gears as Hadir kicked the release. They spilled into a service alley lined with cardboard bales. Dawn bled pink along the roof lines. Somewhere beyond, Spears Road waited, along with Webb's threat and a brother hooked to a car battery. Ali steadied his breath, letting the tremor in his hands fade until only the drum of destiny remained. 2 more blocks, Hadir said, eyes blazing despite exhaustion. "Past the cinema, across the square. After that, it's your ring, champ." Ali rolled the wounded shoulder, hearing faint applause that might have been memory, might have been gunfire echo. "Then bell's about to ring," he whispered, and launched forward, each step a promise that before the sun climbed fully, he would decide whose blood stained Beirut's streets, his own or the men who dared aim at what he loved. Metal slammed against metal, a punishing clang that bounced down the concrete throat of New York City jail and kept ricocheting until the whole corridor seemed to vibrate in sympathy. Somewhere beyond the barred junction, a laundry cart wailed forward, its crooked wheel scribbling an iron squeal across the floor, then fading like a bad note swallowed by gloom. Under the single cone of a hanging bulb, Muhammad Ali waited, wrists chained to a steel ring in the tabletop. Each microscopic movement made the cuffs chatter, dry, surgical, the way a stopwatch nags every half-second of a losing round. 2 men in ash-colored suits occupied the opposite shadows. No lapel pins, no service stripes, just identical tie clips and eyes polished to the temperature of wet gravel. One spoke, 4 words only, graded out as though letters cost money. "Sign the accord. Walk out." The other slid a thick dossier forward. It smelled of mildew and old rainwater. Corners were torn away. Brown flecks stained the cover like dead chrysanthemums. On top lay a plastic evidence sleeve, fogged with fingerprints, and inside that sleeve was a Polaroid. Coach Jake Nolan tilted sideways in a folding chair, wrists purple around the twine, cigarette burns walking up his forearm, mouth too swollen to close. Ali's pulse stumbled. He kept his face carved from basalt, but the furnace at the back of his skull roared higher, and the cuffs ticked their mocking metronome. The agent nudged another item across the metal. Yesterday's Daily News. Sports section opened to a bold headline about a Las Vegas title clash nobody had confirmed yet. Balanced on the newsprint sat a coiled wire microphone no wider than a ring. Its silver braid caught the lamplight and winked like a reptile's eye. Cold dread met powerless fury and fused into something that shook his lungs from the inside. He felt the combative heat rise, urged to leap, to swing, to do anything that wasn't patience. Yet the picture of Jake's twisted fingers lay there, louder than the cuffs. Somewhere in the echoing distance, a subway rumble crawled beneath the foundations, vibrating the stool legs, reminding him that a city of 8 million slept above, while this narrow room rearranged the future. Memory lunged sideways. Adolescent Cassius on a church basement ring, brow split by a practice hook. Coach Nolan pressing a homemade ice pack to the cut. "Breathe, kid. Cuts heal quicker than doubt." The voice dissolved under the present hiss of lamp static, but its cadence hung in the air long enough to knot Ali's jaw. The nearer agent flipped the dossier open. Travel manifests, grainy surveillance frames of his brother Rahman hustled into a maroon sedan, cables snaking under his shirt toward a square-edged battery. A gloved finger tapped the photo once, then began counting down, slow, deliberate. 1, 2. The bulb cut out before 3 arrived, popping into blackness so thick every sound took shape. Chains grated against iron, chair feet screeched. A second click, smaller, told him a new lock had sealed the only door. Ali inhaled through his nose, tasting bleach and rust. Panic fluttered, trying to get purchase, but another sensation edged it aside. The unmistakable snap of destiny tightening. He pictured Rahman strapped in a basement somewhere, pictured Jake's blistered hands, pictured a ring of gamblers in Las Vegas waiting to buy the rest of his name by the round. Then he pictured himself doing nothing. That last image was the one he could not abide. The decision landed silently. Light returned, abrasive, yellow as fever. The agents found him already signing, pen steady despite the tremor that rode his shoulders. They exchanged a curt nod, uncuffed his right wrist first, then the left. No triumph in their faces, only bureaucratic relief, as though a checkbox somewhere got marked, resolved. One laid the coil mic beside the pen. Rehearsal in 48 hours. Our driver will collect you. Door bolts retracted. Hallway breath surged in, carrying soap, cigarettes, the tired mutter of guards trading gossip about the Mets. As Ali stood, the chain at his waist dragged once against the floor, then fell slack. A guard unhooked it, shoved the loose ends into a canvas sack, and gestured toward the ramp. They escorted him past peeling cinder blocks stained the color of fog. Overhead, piping rattled as a distant train crossed Lexington Avenue, each clatter mapping neatly onto his heartbeat. The ramp angled upward to an exit gate where night air pooled, tasting of diesel and February snow. Somewhere beyond that gate, neon promised coffee, sirens promised warning, and the largest fight of his life, one with no referee, no bell, and no scorecards, waited with gloves already laced. Ali rolled his shoulders once, feeling the phantom ropes of a ring that did not yet exist. The guard keyed the padlock. As the gate yawned open, a shoal of street noise spilled in, horns, steam vents, boot heels on wet pavement. Yet all he truly heard was the hollow, echoing second between punches, the whispering silence that years from now might swallow his sight forever. Into that hush he stepped, ready to gamble what remained of legend on the chance that legend could still redeem flesh and blood. Warm sludge lapped at Ali's boots as he ducked beneath the mangled iron gate of the defunct dockyard, the Mississippi's brackish breath thick with diesel and rot. Sodium lamps nailed to leaning pilings quivered in the humidity, their jaundiced halos rippling on the knee-deep flood that sheeted the floor like an unmade mirror. New Orleans by night always talked loud, but here, in the drowned skeleton of Dry Dock 7, it whispered. Back alley saxophone phrases, muffled calls from river tugs, the hiss of mud between broken planks. Captain Lou appeared first as a silhouette the size of folklore, tattoos crawling over his forearms like angry maps of lost archipelagos. He shook an empty jerry can beside a trash fire barrel, clang-clang, letting the echo announce that wagers were set, escape paths burned. House rules, Lou growled, voice hoarse from South China sea salt. No judges, no mercy, winner keeps lungs. Laughter broke from the semicircle of spectators, dock workers, oil rig roughnecks, men who still slept in jungle hammocks inside their skulls. A few dabbed white crystals from matchboxes onto gums already numb. One vet, call sign Hooper, raised a fist wrapped in gray duct tape, the loose end tucked beneath a pin from a frag grenade clutched in his other hand. His pupils were tiny bullets. Another, nicknamed Doc, bounced on bare soles, Novocaine grin leaking from the corner of his mouth. Ali cataloged them like combinations. Wide right, low center, rabbit-fast left. High above, on the rusted neck of a crane, Hadir straddled steel lattice with a transistor rig the size of a lunch pail. She flicked a toggle. A red diode answered, pulsing Morse into the damp. Somewhere in a Manhattan studio, a CBS night editor would notice the pirate carrier wave and wonder why heavyweight static smelled of swamp moss. Chains rattled. The ring, A makeshift octagon lashed from towing links shuddered as Ali stepped onto the groaning deck. Water squelched through nail holes. Every shift of weight triggered damp wood to complain. A sirloin moon eyed the scene through torn clouds and did not blink. Hooper lunged first, shoulder feint masking a left-hand swing meant to detonate eardrums. Ali rolled with it, felt the wind brush the edge of his cheek, answered with an inside shovel hook that pegged Hooper's liver. Breath whooshed out like boiler steam. Tape split, revealing knuckles scabbed over older venues. Doc pounced while Ali finished the pivot, elbows like piston rods. One landed, sliced open the leather above Ali's eyebrow, hot drizzle, copper taste, blood speckled a brewery billboard of a face. Mace, third in line, heavier, scar spinning from crown to lip. He carried the complacent rage of a man who once bayoneted bamboo shadows. Mace shot a clinch, free hand clawing for Ali's eye socket. Ali trapped the wrist, felt tendons buzz like siege cables, drove a knee across the veteran's midsection. Wood splintered, Mace's balance skipped, and dark water swallowed him in a single gulp. The crowd howled, not sporting disapproval, but hunger for fresher peril. Then everything snapped black. Upriver transformers spit sparks. The dock's feeble grid died. A heartbeat later, magnesium flares hissed to life, their nuclear glare throwing white skeletons upon corrugated walls. In that X-ray moment, a stranger in a Yale windbreaker hurled an airmail envelope onto the planks at Ali's feet, then vanished into the photonegative chaos. The paper hissed where river mist touched it, stenciled with 2 words: Juarez Manifest. Sirens rolled nearer, thin first, then fat with urgency. Captain Lou cursed in a dialect of rust, flipped the jerrycan, and traced a fiery question mark across the surface water. Kerosene fireworks rose, painting everyone riot orange. Spectators scattered, some splashing into the drink, others climbing cranes like panicked gulls. Ali scooped the envelope, vaulted the mangled ropes, and sprinted toward the wharf's lip, where Hadir waved from a sagging ladder. They dropped together, shoulders knifing through water that smelled of dead batteries. Cold, constricted lungs, but doused the cut's burn. Above, Lou's accelerant roared, a living fuse keeping squad cars at bay. Current wrestled them south, iron pilings sliding by like dark planets. A stern-wheel steamer, late freight from Baton Rouge, churned upstream. Its paddles thumped a giant's heartbeat against the river skin. Ali kicked hard, pulling Hadir clear of the undertow, the rhythmic thud marking time between breaths. When the wheel's roar finally faded, only night insects and distant Bourbon Street brass shared the river with them, and the sloshing secret sealed inside a wet envelope that already weighed heavier than any tidal belt he had ever lifted. Heat rose from the asphalt in liquid waves, turning the 2-lane strip of State Route 9 into a blur where sky and desert shook hands and lied about distance. The smuggler's bus, a sun-bleached Greyhound with its logos scraped off and bullet holes souvenir-patched by Bondo, coughed itself to a halt, brakes squealing like pigs discovering the knife. Dust drifted through open windows, coating the passengers' sweat-glossed faces with pale grit that smelled of talc and old bones. Inside, Muhammad Ali sat 3 rows behind the driver, shoulders wedged against cracked vinyl, a square of muslin pressed over the gash above his brow. The bandage was damp, half with river water, half with a bitter solution that Don Ramos, the herbalist riding shotgun, called cocoa y azufre. It stung like lash marks, but it chased the dizziness from Ali's skull long enough to keep him upright. The piece of cloth in his fist, a length of medical gauze stolen from an army surplus kit, felt heavier with every heartbeat, though its true weight was the chalky residue hidden in its weave. Opium dust. Somebody wanted the champ to cross this border, carrying felony breath. Ramos stood, the straw brim of his sombrero brushing bent luggage rails. "Federales," he warned, voice as dry as mesquite, pointing through the dusty windshield. A checkpoint materialized ahead. 2 jeeps parked nose to nose, rifles leaned casual dangerous, tin signs hammered into dirt reading Control Sanitario. A portable radio on the guard table crackled ranchera chords that bled into the baking air. Ali wiped his lips. The taste was copper and something acrid, as if he'd bitten a battery. His pulse tapped Morse behind the eyes. He glanced down the aisle. Ex-soldiers, mule drivers, a nun hugging a crate labeled motor parts. Hadir sat across, radio pack between her knees, tapping an encoded rhythm on its bakelite shell. Her dark gaze met his for a half-second. No signal lights needed. They were out of time. The bus door wheezed open. Hot wind barged in uninvited. A lieutenant in khaki, Coyote, the locals whispered, climbed the steps. His jaw was filed to a permanent smirk, mirrored lenses reflecting every heartbeat inside the coach. "Passports," he said, casual as offering gum. Thumb hooked his belt where a Colt hung loose. Promise not threat. Papers shuffled. Beads of sweat dropped like ticker tape. When Ali's forged passport reached the lieutenant, Coyote slipped a folded manifest from his pocket and laid it over the photograph. "Scheduled transfer, pharmaceutical-grade morphine, Memphis connection, signed Muhammad Ali." The boxer's name dangled there like a dead canary. "Seems our champion is branching into export," Coyote mocked, the drawl rolling off sun-cracked lips. A low chuckle slithered through the bus, equal parts fear and morbid entertainment. Ali felt the interior grow smaller, the aisle now a tunnel rushing toward a bell he could not duck. His old trainer's voice, Nolan, that Appalachian rasp, echoed from some buried locker. When cornered, change the ring. He rose slowly, towering, yet speaking soft enough to force the lieutenant nearer. "You want a real signature, amigo? Earn it." Coyote's smile thinned. Outside, cicadas screamed like rusty hinges. He stepped back, motioned with 2 fingers. Rifles answered. "Road stop's dull," he said. "Give us a show." He pointed toward a military flatbed parked off the shoulder, where tarps and crates had been shoved aside to create a wooden platform bordered by gas cans and barbed wire. An arena small as a barbershop floor, deadly as the Psalm of David. Passengers filed out under the muzzle of noon. Ali's boots met powdered earth that puffed around his ankles like ghost smoke. The wound above his eye pulsed again. Sun hammered iron nails into his skull. He flexed hands, felt tendons sing. Across the improvised square stood Coyote's champion, a whip-lean mercenary named Blanco, cheeks carved by malaria, forearms wrapped in scrap canvas smeared with axle grease, friction instead of gloves. A pair of dog tags slapped hollow against his ribs with every breath. No bell, only Coyote's whistle. Blanco rushed, leading with elbows junkyard style. Ali sidestepped, boots skidding on plank splinters, the world narrowing to impact angles and the metronome of his own breath. Blanco feinted head, kicked knee, illegal anywhere but here. Pain shot up Ali's thigh. He answered with a shovel hook that buried itself in the ribs. Blanco's spit flew like shattered glass. Crowd noise, guffaws, bets shouted in 2 currencies, grew syrup-thick, then blurred. Sunlight whitened to a cruel halo. Ali's vision rippled, pupils contracting as the drug dust from the gauze found bloodstream again. Fight blind. The phrase arrived not as thought, but as ancestral instruction. He closed eyes, let Cochlear read wind. Boot scuff, left, breath hitch, high guard dropping. Blanco's arm sliced air. Ali slipped inside, drove an uppercut so short it felt like signing his name on the man's sternum. Bone met bone, a sound like an axe finding timber. Blanco's body folded, knees carving dust angels on the planks. Silence landed, heavy as a coffin lid. Even cicadas stopped. Coyote's revolver cleared leather halfway before Hadir's shout cut through. "Look!" She held aloft a flare pistol looted from the bus toolbox, muzzle kissing the sky. She fired. Scarlet magnesium arced like a comet across border emptiness, bursting above the checkpoint in a bloom of unlawful daylight. Radios on the jeeps squawked frantic calls. Higher command, American patrols, unknown threat. Distraction bought heartbeats. Ali crashed his shoulder into Coyote, gun spinning into sand. Hadir yanked the flatbed's gate chain. Crates slid, gasoline cans toppled. Wood snapped, flames licked dry boards, birthing a wall of orange that drove soldiers back. Ali grabbed the lieutenant's discarded jacket. Inside, 2 stamped passports and a key card glittered like lucky teeth. They sprinted for the drainage culvert under the road, smoke clawing at lungs. Behind, rifle shots cracked, but dust devils camouflaged everything beyond 10 steps. The tunnel spat them into a scrub ravine where railroad ties stitched the horizon. Freight horns moaned somewhere north, steel wheels singing of yards and junctions. Night would fall cold here, but night was a luxury reserved for survivors. Ali stuffed the passports into his boot, fingers trembling. Hadir slapped a fresh strip of gauze over his split brow. No narcotic this time, only salt and stinging alcohol. "Keep your eyes open," she whispered. Ali managed a grin despite the burn. "Eyes aren't the only thing I've got," he said, and the 2 figures started south along the track bed, the desert devouring their footprints before the wind could remember who passed. A cobalt smear of false dawn clung to the desert when the bus finally surrendered him to the American checkpoint. Sodium lamps buzz-hissed around a prefab guard shack, and the step-down transformer behind a chain-link fence droned with the fury of an angry hive. Sand whirled in tight spirals beneath every headlight beam until each cone of brightness looked alive. Muhammad Ali, barefoot because his boots had bled out miles ago, was ordered to brace against the hood of a patrol wagoneer. The paint felt ice-cold, cruel on skin flayed by shale and cactus spines. His fingertips quivered, not from fear, at least that's what he told himself, but from the exhaustion of running past the limits of ordinary muscle. 2 men in windbreaker suits emerged from the gloom, their badges kept pocket-deep as if secrecy were a fragrance. One, square-jawed, sported a fresh splash of coffee across his lapel, bureaucracy in human form. The other flipped open the tailgate and produced a stack of manila folders so thick it sagged in his grip. On top lay a headset no larger than a grasshopper, wire coiled like a patient viper. "Here's the play, champ," Coffee Stain said, voice flat as hardpan. "Wear the wire in Vegas, hand Saul Webb a televised funeral. Your brother walks out of county and straight into an ambulance, courtesy of Uncle Sam." The transformer cracked louder, punctuating each syllable like a hidden drummer. Far off, a freight train slapped rails, steel against steel, a giant stopwatch counting down. Ali kept silent, eyes following the sway of boxcar lanterns beyond the perimeter. Steam from his breath ghosted around his face. A glint of frost formed where sweat met desert chill. Coffee Stain laid the next card. A snapshot, edges ragged, showed Ali's younger sibling trussed to a gurney, IV taped too tight, pupils pinned wider than hope. Beside it, another photo. Ali's father, hair gray and spirit frayed, clutching betting slips outside Webb's casino office. The old man's eyes were glassy, the whiskey shine impossible to ignore. "He's running errands for the man who's been carving your family for parts," the agent muttered. Guilt surged like battery acid in Ali's throat. Childhood thundered back, midnight drills in a leaky Louisville gym, his father swinging the heavy bag so the boy could practice counterhooks, rainwater spattering plywood floors, the mingled smell of damp leather and pine tar. Those nights had sounded like promise. Now they roared like accusation. A wiry technician stepped forward, unraveling a thread-thin microphone fused to medical gauze. "Stitch this inside your left hand wrap," he explained, speaking to Ali's knuckles as though they were smarter than ears. "Every heartbeat triggers a marker. The tape monkeys in the van can separate your pulse from crowd noise. All we need is Webb's voice ordering the dive." He pressed the bundle into Ali's palm. It felt lighter than sin, heavier than forgiveness. The boxer's breaths shortened. He pictured Las Vegas spotlights drilling into an arena floor, the smell of Rosine and ego, the moment a nation would cheer a lie to save a life. Cold wind rattled the checkpoint's sheet metal roof, sounding uncannily like chains whipping an old speed bag. That private radio of fear inside his skull crackled. "You're gambling your soul on a crooked bell." Coffee Stain slipped a clipboard beneath the light. "Temporary immunity. Sign and we start the clock." Between their boots, dust eddied, erasing footprints even as they formed. For 5 heartbeats, Ali studied the blank where his name should go. The humming transformer, the gravelly chug of the distant train, the soft whistle of a desert breeze, all merged into one gigantic exhale. He scrawled his signature in ink that looked too bright for pre-dawn. The agent squeezed his shoulder, breath hot with stale diner brew. "The whole country's going to wager on you now," he whispered, half encouragement, half verdict. Doors slammed. The Wagoneer spun a wide arc, tail lights casting blood-red fans through powdery air before disappearing toward Interstate 10. Alone again, Ali flexed the bandaged hand, the hidden wire already warming against his skin. The checkpoint lights dimmed as the transformer cycled down. In the settling quiet, the clack-clack of boxcars faded into nothing. He drew one long, deliberate breath, filling lungs scorched by sand and compromise, then turned his face east, toward a sun he might never see clearly, but would enter the ring to defend all the same. The crowd inside the MGM Grand felt like a living furnace. 23,000 voices fused into one tidal roar that climbed the walls, rattled the catwalk lamps, and settled inside Muhammad Ali's ribcage the way thunder settles in a valley. He stepped from the tunnel, robes swinging around swollen calves, and salt tracked down his cheeks before the first trumpet of the ring walk anthem had finished its lonely spiral across the floor. Commentators in powder blue blazers leaned forward. "Why is the champion crying?" But the ring lights were too bright to let anyone read the answer in his eyes. The canvas carried the bite of fresh resin mixed with the antiseptic sting of ammonia. The cutmen were already swabbing on somebody else's bad luck. A line of velvet-jacketed high rollers pressed against the apron. Behind them, casino glassware clinked in distant lounges like silver rain. Above it all, NBC's shoulder-mounted cameras rolled with a low insectoid hum, red tally lamps glowing like coals. Ali's left wrist tingled where the gauze hid that hair-thin wire, and in the surge of noise, he could almost convince himself it was nothing more than nerves. Round one spilled out frantic and fast, glove leather, gum shield spit, the sweet percussion of bodies foundering in clinches. His challenger, Elroy the Rail Matheson, grinned through a mask of Vaseline, pumping jabs that snapped like broken yardsticks. Ali rode the ropes, not because he had to, but because he needed Matheson to believe it. Above the din, he could hear Webb's entourage shouting odds to the casino runners, their words sucked up by ceiling microphones and shipped live to every betting pit on the Strip. Third round, moment of staged weakness. Matheson flicked a gloved paw, barely the weight of a handshake, yet Ali allowed his knees to fold as though gravity had suddenly doubled. He hit the floor with theatrical precision. Shoulder, hip, thigh, then a slow roll that let him see Webb's skybox. Inside the tinted glass, the promoter pressed a telephone to his mouth, lips moving with the crisp cadence of a man moving money. "Change the line. He's gassed. Shave it down 2 points." The pulse in Ali's taped hand drove each syllable down that copper filament toward the surveillance van idling behind the arena loading dock. By the sixth, the script was fraying. Matheson's corner smelled weakness and ordered the kill. Ali's optic nerve, bruised from days in the sun, kept blooming white sparks that swallowed half the ring. In the seventh break, Matheson crowded close, fingers lacing Ali's palm instead of throwing a punch. Under the referee's blind side, he squeezed the bandage and hissed, "They'll cut your brother before the bell if you keep dancing." Then he was gone, retreating behind a pike of jabs, leaving Ali with the taste of battery acid where courage used to sit. Time lost its arithmetic. Bells rang, stools flew, crowds surged. Somewhere in the riot of flashbulbs, Ali's rap began to unravel, sweat and resin turning gauze into wet paper. 11th round, 64 seconds in, a strand of copper glimmered beneath the ring spots. One fierce wink of metal that froze 1,000 gamblers mid-exhale. Gasps ricocheted through the cheap seats. At ringside, Webb's lawyers bolted upright as though sprung by the same coil. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Matheson charged, smelling both paycheck and disaster. Ali closed his eyes. The retina might betray him, but sound would not. He counted the echo of Matheson's soles slapping canvas, the slap returning off the far ropes a fraction of a second later. He felt the whoosh of displaced air on his damp skin, left hook, short, cross, long, saw it all in sonics the way a bat sees in pitch black. He pivoted, weight on the ball of a foot that screamed from desert bruises, and fired a blind uppercut drawn from muscle memory and the deepest well of faith a fighter can know. The punch rose through Matheson's guard like a geyser through limestone. Jaw met knuckle, vertebrae snapped light from crown to heel, and the challenger collapsed as though some puppeteer had cut every string at once. Referee Davy Pearl counted over a body that twitched but did not rise. During those 10 slow beats, the arena's roar decayed into awestruck silence, then rebuilt itself into something raw, almost holy. Ali sank to one knee, head bowed, tears mixing with the copper taste of adrenaline. Above the ropes he saw Hadir Sharif in the photographer's pit, a single negative strip held like a victory pennant between finger and thumb, proof that bombs, bribes, and midnight murders were more than rumor. Flashbulbs strobed. The wire in his bandage crackled with a final snippet of crowd frenzy before the battery died. When the bell tolled its flat metallic sigh, Ali stood, arms heavy, eyes aflame. He listened to 23,000 strangers pound their hands together until the rhythm felt like a gigantic heartbeat echoing his own. He raised one fist, only one, because the other now carried evidence powerful enough to topple an empire of fixed fights, and let the noise wash over him until, somewhere deep inside, the radio of fear finally went quiet. The strip beyond the loading ramp pulsed with neon bruises and April heat, but inside the idling Cadillac limousine, everything felt refrigerated, silent, expectant. Webb's bodyguards shoved Muhammad Ali across the leather bench seat, then hauled his father, Cassius Sr., in after him. The old man winced as the door slammed, cheap bourbon on his breath, gasoline on his suit cuffs, guilt sweating through both. Webb climbed in last, narrow shoulders lit by the glow of Fremont's signage behind him, and threw a blood-spotted sling over his own wounded arm. Tires squealed, the driver pinned the accelerator, and the big car surged onto I-15 like a black torpedo, headlights kill-switched to avoid patrol glare. Vegas receded in a prism of kaleidoscopic reds and greens. Ahead stretched a ribbon of asphalt that cut the Mojave like a scalpel. Inside, the only illumination came from the dash radio, its amber dial crawling across late-night frequencies until it snagged a pirate signal, Hadir's encoded broadcast. A clipped female voice reported coordinates, then fizzed into static. Webb's eyes flicked toward Ali, who sat handcuffed yet eerily composed. "You should have stayed down in the third," the promoter hissed, pressing a Browning against Cassius Sr.'s ribs. "Now the house wants revenge." Ali answered with the slow shake of a man who has already run the math on consequences. "You think your ledger matters tonight? The Bureau has the tape. Your odds, your bombs, your men in Beirut, all boxed up for a federal judge." Webb smirked. "Judges bleed like everyone else." A gust of desert wind jammed sand under the wipers. Visibility vanished. The Cadillac swerved. In the side mirror, Ali glimpsed headlights cutting through the murk. Hadir's battered '67 Mustang, grill taped, one fender the color of dried blood. Her high-beam Morse flashed. 3 long, 2 short, 3 long. SOS. The freeway narrowed for construction. Rebar and broken concrete littered the shoulder. The Cadillac plowed through a forest of fallen cones, fishtailing. From the rear, sirens wailed, distant but gaining. Metro cruisers, maybe, or unmarked Bureau iron finally closing the triangle. Webb cursed, grabbed the old man by the collar, and dragged him toward the opposite door. At mile marker 78, a derelict Texaco appeared. Canopy half collapsed, pumps gutted. The limo lurched off the pavement and skidded to a halt beside a skeletal sign that squealed like an injured hawk in the gale. Webb spilled out, pistol first, yanking Cassius Sr. as human shield. Sodium moonlight found the promoter's sweating brow. Sand whipped around them in vaporous sheets. Ali stepped from the car unshackled. Webb's men too busy covering arcs to notice him slide a hidden Slim Jim from his boot and pop the cuffs. Blood hummed in his temples, but his ears were clear, locked on the rhythm of his father's ragged breaths. "Don't be stupid, Muhammad," Webb barked, adjusting his aim. "One step, and I ventilate his lung." Behind the wrecked pump island, the Mustang screeched in, engine coughing. Hadir vaulted out, not with a gun, but with a tape reel wound in plastic, proof enough to seal Webb's coffin. She tossed it over the cracked pavement. Wind snatched the loose leader, so it fluttered like metallic ribbon. Webb's gaze flicked toward the evidence, momentary fracture. Ali moved. Years of ring timing translated into desert ballet. A sidestep through swirling grit, a palm chop to Webb's wrist, the pistol's thunder trapped between bodies. Muzzle flash lit their faces for a frozen frame. Promoter's eyes wide, father grimacing, Ali's jaw clenched in merciless focus. The bullet punched through Cassius Sr.'s shoulder, grazed Webb's scapula, and ricocheted into the rusted canopy, showering sparks onto dried tumbleweed. Webb crumpled, weapon skittering. Ali caught his staggering father, lowered him onto an old oil-slicked welcome mat. "You pay for nothing else tonight, Pop," he whispered, tearing the promoter's silk tie to fashion a tourniquet. The elder Ali managed a pained grin. "Floating like a butterfly even out here, son." Blue strobe light washed the scene as Bureau sedans and Metro cruisers boxed the station. Agents fanned out, weapons leveled. Webb tried to crawl, but a boot pinned his wounded shoulder. Hadir pressed a gauze pad against Cassius Sr.'s wound, then placed the tape reel into a detective's gloved hand. Sand still hissed across the concrete. But beneath the static, Ali heard a distant roll of thunder. Monsoon building over the Sierra, or maybe the sound of walls collapsing around a crooked empire. An EMT cut away the elder Ali's jacket. Crimson blossomed across gauze, yet the bleeding slowed. Muhammad rose, knuckles sticky with his father's blood, and stared into the cruiser's flashing reds. Each pulse echoed the MGM ovation, still ghosting his inner ear. Different arena, same verdict. One fight remained. The tribunal of public truth. As Webb was lifted screaming onto a gurney, the champ turned his face to the wind, eyelids half closed, listening for the first honest silence of his troubled night. Flashbulbs crackled like microscopic landmines the moment Muhammad Ali crossed the threshold of the Caesar's Palace News Theater. He wore a charcoal training jacket zipped to the throat, a white canvas sling, speckled by his father's dried blood, pinned his left arm. Outside, storm-washed palm fronds rattled against rain gutters, but inside the air tasted of Freon, television varnish, and collective hunger. Reporters surged, cables snaked underfoot, and 3 pan-tilt cameras groaned while tracking him from backstage to the blue-draped podium. Doctors flanked him, torches ready. One lifted a pen light and peeled an eyelid upward. The golden cone revealed a reddened sclera, the pupil sluggish at best. Ali didn't blink. The doctor murmured something about retinal shearing. The surrounding microphones swallowed the verdict and spat it out tinny and multiplied. A murmur rustled among beat writers. Some scribbled, others slumped, suddenly reverent. Ali tapped the lectern twice. Wood meeting bone, a boxer's natural gavel. The room stilled. "I heard a silence tonight I've never heard before," he began, each syllable rounded yet economical, the cadence of a man counting remaining heartbeats. "It sounded like a bell that won't let you back out for the next round." Hissing camera servos tracked closer. He inhaled, tasting the copper memory of the desert gunshot. "And I chose the roar of this crowd over that quiet, so if you see me blink slowly, if you think the lights hurt me." He paused, tightening the sling. "Understand, I paid on purpose." He motioned. An aide produced 2 cashier's checks. The first he slid toward a gray-suited Lebanese consul representing victims of the rooftop bombing in Beirut. The second he handed to a shy Harlem youth ushered forward by Hadir. The boy's eyes widened at the amount. Photographers leaned in, shutters clapping. A columnist muttered, "That's the whole purse." Ali heard him, smiled faintly. "A champion keeps nothing he can't carry into the dark," he said. A producer from NBC shouted, "Were you crying before the opening bell?" The champ pivoted toward the voice. "Tears, yes. Fear, no. When you realize sight may leave, you bottle every color you've got left. Tonight, the ring was scarlet and gold and electric. How could a man not weep knowing that picture might be his last?" The back doors burst wide. Orderlies rolled in a gurney bearing Saul Webb. His suit coat hung in rags around a pressure dressing. Morphine glazed his glare. He tried to raise a handcuffed wrist, but pain crushed the gesture. Ali's gaze found him, measured, then drifted to the attending medic. "Keep him conscious," he requested softly. "The truth ought to hurt until it teaches." Gasps fluttered. Even the telephoto lenses froze. The medic nodded. Sedation line remained clamped. Head of the Nevada Athletic Commission cleared her throat, paperwork trembling. "Assessment complete," she announced. "Significant retinal detachment in the right eye. Optic nerve trauma probable. Fight licenses rescinded pending medical review. Indefinitely." A hush vacuumed the hall. Somewhere a single spectator, post-op heart patient given floor access by Hadir, clapped once, twice, defiantly. The applause multiplied, filling the void like rising tide. Camera booms shook from the vibration. Ali turned sideways, locating the souvenir ring rope a security guard had draped across a nearby chair. He reached, fingertips brushing braided hemp. Texture replaced vision. Fibers mapped themselves across his memory. He whispered, almost inaudible, "Feels just like 1964. Tight, brand new, waiting." Hadir stepped beside him, untouched reel of evidence in her arms, and breathed, "Real sight starts past the light." Her words drifted into the ceiling vents, lingered like incense. The applause settled into a stable, metronomic rhythm. Thump, pause, thump, indistinguishable from a heavy bag meeting a practiced fist. Ali straightened, eyes half-closed beneath swelling, and grinned with a serenity reporters would later call terrifyingly bright. He tapped the lectern once more. The power amps hummed. Then, as if on cue, every Klieg lamp dimmed to embers, leaving only the beat of many hands and the champion's breathing to carry the story forward into darkness.